Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Today is September 25th, and this is our bi-weekly SIG CLI call. My name is Maciej, and I'll be your host today. And before we dive into our main topics, which is planning for 117, a quick announcement / reminder from the previous sessions. We are holding a SIG CLI 90-minute session during KubeCon North America in San Diego. I put the link in the agenda and the meeting notes. So if you happen to be at the KubeCon in San Diego in November, feel free to join. We will be covering multiple topics depending on what people will be interested in. So it will be a live session. It can be live coding, live code reviews. It literally, the contents of that session will depend on the attendees of the session. Additionally, you'll get a chance to meet us in person. Myself, Phil, and Sean, we will be hosting the show that day. So I'm hoping to see as many of you as possible, and I hope we'll be able to answer all your secret questions and desires with regards to kubectl and the SIG CLI. Okay, with that, I think we can move to our main topics, which is 117 planning. As you probably remember from last time, the master for Kubernetes 117 opened about 2 weeks ago, which means everyone are busy cranking code for 117 release. And let's try to cover the main topics that the SIG CLI would like to cover within the 117 timeframe. And I'll pass the baton to Sean, because the kubectl independence is the main topic that the SIG CLI has been working for over a year already, and we're very close to actually realizing the independence. But I'll let Sean speak about what is to be done there still for the 117 release. Go ahead, Sean.
Thanks, Maciej. Yeah, actually, as Maciej mentioned, I think we've mentioned a couple times earlier, we're very close to being completely independent of Kubernetes core. There are 3 commands in particular, subcommands, kubectl subcommands in particular, that have dependencies on Kubernetes core. Those are kubectl get, kubectl auth reconcile, and kubectl convert. And so I have updates on all 3 of those. So on get, there is, we're 2 PRs away from removing this dependency. I have a PR out now. It's been out for a little while, and Jordan Liggett is aware of it, and hopefully he could get to that relatively soon. It basically rewrites a bunch of tests to allow us to pull the table printing out of package printers. That was probably way too many details, but basically we're 2 PRs away from getting that dependency out. The next dependency I'd like to talk about is the kubectl convert. So I just had a meeting in the SIG architectures code organization meeting, which was attended by Jordan Liggett and David Eads, as well as DIMS. And I mentioned that we were getting a plugin repository, or maybe getting a plugin repository for community developed plugins. And then actually there was a discussion about not taking that path. So David Eads, actually his preferred path for the kubectl convert functionality is to put it into the API server. And so I'm actually creating an issue right now so that Jordan, David, and I can resolve exactly which one of 4 different options now for how to, where the kubectl convert functionality goes once it's moved out of kubectl. So it could be a plugin, it could be a standalone binary, it could go to the API server, or we could just drop it all together. So I thought that we had a straightforward path, but it seems there's not consensus on that, and so I'll send out the PR or a link to this issue that's we're probably going to need to resolve before we pull kubectl convert out. So there's slightly more hurdles to overcome, it sounds like now, for kubectl convert. Although we announced deprecation in 1.13, so we are technically allowed to pull kubectl convert out right now. It's just that if we do without putting that functionality somewhere else, we may be letting some of the community down. So anyway, if you have any ideas on this, if you think we should just drop it, let us know. Again, I'm going to send to the entire SIG CLI this issue so that we can discuss and hopefully quickly come to a consensus on if and where that functionality will end up once it's removed from kubectl convert. So the final auth reconcile is.
Can I stop you for a
Yep.
minute, Sean? I think that should not stop the independence move because,
Okay.
as you mentioned before, the fact that we deprecated convert is not stopping us from dropping the support for kubectl convert command under kubectl itself. Where the command as a plugin or standalone, it doesn't matter, honestly, because both will work the same way. Whether it will live in the main Kubernetes repo, whether in API machinery or somewhere else, honestly, should not matter that much.
Okay.
It's just that we will not include it in kubectl by default. You'll have to do that additional step to be able to have that functionality, and we'll just have to figure out, and that's doable within 1.17. What is the final location? Not sure about API machinery though. I was under the impression that API machinery does not have the internal types that are required for convert to work properly. But I'm not 100% sure.
I think that from what I had heard, that API machinery is the only place that the internal version should live, and that at the API server they do numerous converts. Within the patch endpoint, they do like 5 converts. Anyway, I hear you.
If that's the direction, yeah, I don't have any objections. I think we can go ahead, send that email. I'm pretty sure that we will be able to get to the consensus pretty fast with that one, and that should not block us in any way.
Yeah. Okay. I'll definitely. So this just happened. That's why I haven't been in contact with you much. I apologize for dropping this on you right here. I figured we were meeting. I might as well bring it up here instead of. Anyway. Yeah. So there's that, and then there's the auth reconcile, which Jordan has kind of taken the lead on, but he's recently mentioned that it's been trickier than he's imagined, and that he's not even sure that he's going to get it completed by this release, this cleanup that will remove the dependency. So yeah, so that's unfortunate. But yeah, I'm not sure how we could. it's not clear that that's going to be like the top priority for Jordan in this release. And I'm not sure who else would have the chops to approach it. Let me bring that up again with Jordan to see if we can prioritize it for 117. But yeah, that was the kind of the downer for within the last couple weeks about our efforts, is that it sounded like, at least for that one last dependency, there still isn't a clear path to getting it done this release.
So if I can suggest something, I see two possible options. If Jordan is open for help, I'm more than happy to volunteer myself, and
Okay.
I can get Sally to help me with that one and get the necessary refactorings that Jordan is envisioning to make that happen for 117. Or alternatively, we can ask him if he's okay with us copying the code that he envisions to be shared temporarily into kubectl, so that we can proceed with the split with a big deprecation warning inside of the package that will say that this will be replaced by the common library that it is being extracted. I just want to ensure that all the possibilities can be used and hopefully addressed, so that for 117 we could actually have the entire code of kubectl within the staging repo.
Yeah, that's definitely our plan, is to, at least by the end of this release, have it all out. Yeah, but I think, as I mentioned, I think that there's a risk there. But I'll definitely I'll take the action item to loop you and Sally in with Jordan to make sure that we come to a conclusion on at least how we're going to approach it.
Yeah, definitely. Sally and myself, we can have the time needed to make it happen, because I think it is the time so that we can have the kubectl. We'll have plenty of additional work after that happens to clean, because the fact that when we will be in a staging doesn't mean that we have all the E2E and the entire testing infrastructure and the release infrastructure figured out, and that will take some additional time. But I want to ensure that before we get to that point, we are fully in staging, and so that we don't have to work on too many topics at the same time, because I know it happens to be frustrating at times.
Yep. Okay, so that's the kubectl independence update.
Okay.
Our plan for 117.
So does anyone have any questions to Sean with regards to the independence, the kubectl independence? Okay, hearing none. I added the second item. So about a year ago, when we were moving Kustomize over to CLI runtime, I had a discussion with Phil. I do hope he will show up here shortly, that we will move the core of Kustomize into CLI runtime, but leave all the mechanics of Kustomize as part of the Kustomize project. If we won't be involved, that includes myself and Sally, in the kubectl independence, we'll try to cut the core of Kustomize into CLI runtime, so that people who are currently depending on CLI runtime don't have to vendor the entire Kustomize at the same time. We would like to have the core, the engine of Kustomize being part of CLI runtime, like it was discussed several times during our SIG meetings in the past, and then have the additional bits as part of customized as it is these days, and CLI runtime being only the core elements, because currently if you work with CLI runtime, the only functionality that that we are reusing from customized is the core element that allows you to process customized files. And I would like to have that piece of code live inside of the CLI runtime. I'm not sure how much we will be able to go with the plan within the 117 timeframes, but I would like to start that process and the refactorings in that one. Are there any questions with regards to this topic?
Is there, does that require a cap or an issue? Is there already an issue open?
There is no issue yet. With regards to cap, I think it would be worth highlighting the main goals. It is not strictly required, but I think as a good community member, we should create a cap describing the goals and the desired outcomes for this process. So I'll sync with you, Sally, and we'll try to draft the cap.
Okay.
So for this, I remember you mentioned this previously, and for the core customize, oh, I'm not quite sure what do you mean the core customize. Do you mean the core package or the core transformers?
The core transformers without the add-ons and the additional functionality that currently customized project is.
So currently Jeff is working on refactor and customize. So since currently, because of the dependency, circular dependency previously we had, so we couldn't re-render customize again. So Jeff is working on refactoring that so that we have multiple modules and which can be
perfect
easy for consumers to use. So with that change, I think it'd be easier to just render that. So to us, so let's say customize with its core functionality and its core transformers or plugins in the same project. It has larger velocity, and we can do other testing and write other docs under the same project.
I mean, the end goal is basically so that you don't have to, because currently if you try to vendor CLI runtime, and the fact that CLI runtime depends on customized, this requires that every single person that is vendoring CLI runtime also vendors customize. I would like to revert that dependency so that we only rely on CLI runtime, and customize can also rely on CLI runtime, and all the other projects can have a lighter dependency tree for when consuming the CLI runtime. But I'll sync with Jeff. Definitely, that's a good pointer. I'll sync with Jeff what his plan is on that one, and we will try to come up with a reasonable plan how to best approach this one.
Okay.
Okay, does anyone have any other main items that would like to see accomplished for kubectl within 117 timeframes?
Hi, this is Himanshu. So I want to discuss a PR that I created recently. The PR is about default sorting of kubectl get events, and the ask is to when there's no sort by flag is applied, then it should be defaulted to last timestamp. So Philip has a little bit idea about it. I discussed with him. So if you guys want to discuss, I can give you the PR number. Or
Yeah,
if
can you
want to take
paste
it.
the PR in the chat? That'll be helpful.
So I think the issue here is that, like, when you do kube control get for a resource, like, it's the same command for all the resources. And most resources, we don't want to sort by creation timestamp, but events is unique in that we most users probably typically want to view the events sorted by timestamp rather than something else. And so the proposal is to, if we see that users are getting events from kube control, to just default the sorting order to timestamp for that resource only.
Yep.
Maciej, do you know if the sort order is part of the API for the command? Like, I guess I'm just thinking, like,
The
if someone
default for
has
the sort order?
the default sort order, yeah. I assume if you, and I think probably our stance should be that if you are depending on the particular sorting order to do some scripting to, like, get all the events or something, that you should specify the sort order that you want rather than just relying on.
Yeah, that will be my expectation as well. I don't think that, relying on some default sorting, if you expect a particular sorting.
Yeah, that's not a good idea.
Yeah. So the flag itself will be part of the API. The defaults, well, I'm inclined to say that not necessarily.
And that's kind of been our stance for other things too, like with their generators and kube control run, we've said, like, or like, in fact, any of the commands, like if you need a particular API version of the resource, for instance, you have to specify that explicitly, those sorts of things.
No, I don't see any objection in that PR by itself. I think it's a perfectly valid use case. So just fixing whatever Phil has there. And I'm pretty sure we can merge it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, while I have you here, the only thing I change is, like, it says event sorting, but I think it should just be like special case sorting, because this could be used by other things as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then to test, obviously.
Yeah, I will add an S there. I misread there.
So if I'm correct, the sort order for table rows within a table, I'm not sure if it's completely implemented. I thought I saw some to-dos in there about sorting. So the sorting itself is going to have to happen on the API server, since that's what's generating these tables. It would have to sort and then kind of page through these tables, wouldn't it?
Sean, you're talking about server-side printing?
Yeah, so that's the default now. So yeah, let's not get into too many of the details, but my understanding, so I'd be surprised if it was a one file change, but I could be wrong.
Currently this exists as an option, right? Like, currently you can specify that flag and it does sort, correct?
Yeah, my contention is that I don't think that is fully supported, and that flag exists, but is not, may not be fully implemented.
Okay, well, we'll find out in a test, won't we?
Yep.
There's also that idea that I had previously. Currently, if you use kubectl describe any resource, you are getting a list of events directly connected with a particular resource. Even though we have the get events command, it literally does not allow you to do anything with the events.
So maybe we should have a separate command for events. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah. Because most of the time, I'm interested in particular events, either from a particular namespace or related to particular object or something else. And get is definitely not going to allow us to do it. Get should be generic as much as possible. And I would just leave get as is. And I'm inclined to implement something less generic, specifically targeted at get. If I remember correctly, I would have to grab through our agenda notes.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense.
We did talk about it, and we were considering at some point in time special casing events within get command. But at the end of the day, we decided that it would serve more harm than good, because get by itself is already quite complicated with the amount of logic that we baked in it. So having a separate command would be much more reasonable approach, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like the workflow for listing deployments or pods or these sorts of things is different than the workflow for listing events. Because with pods and deployments, you like know either the name or the namespace or the labels, right? You know which ones you're interested in, and so you're requesting those. Whereas with events, they're actually generated based on other objects, and so you don't know, and instead need to look them up.
Just being able to, get the events from a particular resource, it's much more helpful. These days, only describe the resource, and I'm getting, I don't know, a screen of data about the resource that I don't care about. I only care about those 5 or 10 rows that we put at the end of the describe that are related to it. And I think that would be a worthy command for even someone new that is interested in working on kubectl to tackle. And we could introduce this command as an experimental and see how far we can go with it, and then think what to do with it more.
Yeah, why don't we close this issue and create a new one that says, here's how we're going to do it. And then,
that would be even better approach, honestly. That could be like literally kubectl events, and that will be everything about events that we can think of that might be useful for people. Himanshu, you're interested in working on that one?
Yeah, I was about to say yes.
Cool, awesome. That would be pretty amazing. I'll add that one to the planning items for 117.
one thing that actually I think would be pretty useful for 117 as well is some lifecycle annotations, like specifically ignoring certain resources from apply, I think would be pretty important. Like if folks are putting other .yaml files for like meta configuration, like customization YAML is an example of this. Those files should not be applied by kubecontrol. And we should like have some way of opting out when you put a YAML file to say this isn't, should be ignored by kubecontrol, and maybe it should either be an annotation on the object, or I could imagine also as a comment if like it's not even a Kubernetes resource YAML, like at the top of the file. As well as, like, I don't know which ones of these we want, but there's like another thing I've seen is optional components that get installed as part of an app. Like the app CRD is an example of this, where when you package up your workload, you may want an app CRD created or an app created for it if it exists, but then you don't want applying that to fail if the user doesn't have the app CRD installed, right? So being able to mark things as don't fail if this resource doesn't exist. Deletion prevention would be another one I can imagine, where you may want to mark things as like, if you kube control delete this directory by accident, don't delete this resource anyway. You know, those sorts of things.
So you're looking for something that will skip apply entirely or just ignore failure?
I think there's a collection of directives we need to give to apply. Like one is skip apply completely. A customization YAML would fall into this case. Another is don't try to apply this if the resource API, if the API doesn't exist on this particular cluster. It's optional, right? The application CRD would fall into that context. Another would be like, don't delete this even if I tell you to delete it because I may have screwed up. And that would be like the stateful set. You may want to annotate like certain stateful sets so you don't delete your persistent storage. Like, I'm not sure what all of them are. I think that's where the work needs to be done to figure out the types of things we want. And we probably don't need to define all of them up front, but we probably do want to, from a high level, spell out the sort of categories of things we want to do and then pick out one or two. Like the customization YAML one, I think, is going to be important if we are, like, for customized generators and transformers and these sorts of things may want to be hidden.
Do you want those only to apply, or you want a generic mechanism for applying all kinds of directives to, I don't know, a given set of commands?
Yeah, good question. Like the apply is probably the most important. Well, apply and delete are probably the most important. Like the prevent deletion one would go on the delete command. I don't think create is critical. Like create and recreate, or I think that's what it's called. We really discourage folks from using those anyway. So if it happens to work on them, then great. Like if we have an easy way of making it work for all the appropriate commands, great. But if that's going to increase the workload, you know, I don't think it certainly shouldn't double the work to make it for each of the commands when apply is the only one we're really recommending people use for create and update. Anyway, something to think about. Something I was thinking about picking up and writing a cap for 117.
Yeah, I was about to propose, like, start with a cap, like do a brain dump, throw everything you think about into it, and then we can look through it and figure out where we could start with it, and how to proceed, how much we want to go with it. I'm pretty sure that as you start writing this down, a couple things might get clarified. And as the rest of us will be reading through, we'll get some other ideas, and we can shuffle through those and figure out the end goal. But overall, the idea does make sense. I know that I have, for example, somewhere at the back of my head, one example is within the entire kubectl, I would like to be able to ignore printing the last apply annotation that is put on every single resource when you're using kubectl apply, because in the majority of cases, this will end up printing the same object twice. And in 99% of cases, you don't care about that particular annotation when looking at the object.
Yeah, like and probably moving forward, the field set that is replacing it in server-side apply in 1.16 would all similarly probably want to be hidden. All right, I'll put together a test for that and send it out.
Okay, yeah, that would be perfect. Ping me in the chat, please, and
yeah, I'll send it to you, and then I'll send it to the list and
awesome.
Slack channel.
Does anyone else have any other topics that I want to bring for 117 or generally to the attention of the SIG CLI?
One little thing just on the, this is Nick here, on the topic of events. I'm hoping I'm just missing something obvious here, but we found recently, so the default table structure you get from get events does not include any identifying elements for the rows. And so, for example, the event ID is not there. So if I wanted a UI level to know whether, do a diff of 2 tables that I've got back from kubectl, to know whether or not I have new rows, it's hard for me to know that definitively because the default column structure doesn't have an ID.
You can specify the columns you want.
Yes, you can, but then it's difficult to, if I want the default columns plus an ID, I think that is difficult to express because there's no way to say, add one extra column to the default set. So it's a relatively minor point, but it's something that if we're considering small changes, it might be helpful. That would be something of that nature so that consumers can know in some easy fashion from the defaults or extending the defaults, having some identifying elements in the rows.
So
that changes.
In your particular case, you would have to extend the default set of columns, but I would not do it as the default that are always printed. There's an option for wide output, which provides a default columns plus additional set of columns.
Yeah, that's what we're using now. So that's been fine for now, but I don't necessarily want all of the columns in wide. I just want the ID. So it's a relatively minor point, but it's something I wanted to get out there.
It's probably worth, that's an interesting point. I don't think that's something we thought about. It might be worth broadening that discussion to what should the output look like in order to be processed by other tools, right? Because I imagine there's like, I imagine you're doing like parsing on your end, right? That maybe you wouldn't need to do if it was just formatted differently, right? Or like, I don't know, there's things that I don't know, but maybe just starting from like, we could have a new, like we have wide, we have custom things, we have different outputs. We could have like UI parsing, preferred columns or something, which would include the UUID for every object always, right? Or something like that.
I see some sort of, some sort of suggestion, metadata. This is intended for consumption by.
Right, like you'd provide a flag like output UI or something like that, right? And then
to the -OY, but yeah, I see. That's interesting, yeah. That's nice. I have to say, generally, the parsability of kubectl has been admirable. I congratulate everyone on that. There's a few rough edges, as I just mentioned here, but generally it's been great.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
So a quick, just a quick note. It's actually really straightforward to. We want to talk about changing the columns, but actually changing what is in those columns is a pretty small change. Look at package printers table generator.go, and it has for every single one of our resources, including events, the columns that are being printed out. You should we could start there, just as a note.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, I don't see any objections to extend. When I remember when Clayton was starting with the server-side printing, we just reused the same columns that we are printing these days as we were printing back then. Nothing has changed in between, but I don't see any objections for us to adding more columns if it's more appropriate. And the idea of the server-side printer was to expose the printing mechanism to a broader audience of customers. So if there's a strong value in it, I personally don't see any objections, and I can like push the PR forward to get it through.
Okay, I'll look into this. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't get who was talking, who mentioned that. I'm trying to.
Nick.
Yeah, it was Nick, yeah.
Okay, Nick. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
No problem, thank you.
Okay, so I think we can move on to the last item in our agenda, which is stand-ups. And I see that Customize put together some stand-ups. I'll pass the mic to Jingfang or Jeff. I've seen Jeff hiding somewhere behind.
Go ahead,
Phil.
Jim. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So for Customize, in the past week, we released a new version, 3.2.0. So the link points to the release note. And in this release, we have two new features. One is the inline patch, which supports you can put the whole patch as a string in a customization.yaml file instead of putting that patch into a separate file. So the other feature is a new subcommand in Customize. Now under a directory, you can run customize create, then it will create a customization YAML file with all the resources automatically added. So it will scan your current directory, either only on the top level or recursively, and pick up all the resources file and list that in customization YAML file. So that's for the new release. And another thing is the built-in plugin doc. So thanks to Jeff wrote a pretty detailed document about how you can use the built-in plugins. And if you want to say, if you want them to behave different, like for the common labels, if I only want to add label to my label part, but not want to add the common label to the label selector part, then I can use this built-in plugin for common labels. Just choose different configuration, then it works. It will work that way. So in this doc, all of the built-in plugins are documented, and how they used and how you can configure them are all documented there. That's it. Jeff, you want to add more?
Not really. Just to maybe rephrase the plugins, the ability to configure built-in plugins is really a way to make Customize's native behavior behave however you'd like. So it's a mechanism to basically to customize. So the doc provides examples of how to do this, and it gives you completely fine detailed control over what gets customized and how. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Does anyone else, and I'm looking at you, Nick, want to provide some updates?
So we've been working, as I mentioned last week, the crew plugin angle, we've been working on that, exploring that a little more. So in the next, maybe in 2 weeks from now, I can embellish on that point and show how we can maybe get into the world of UI plugins. So I'll be fleshing that story out.
Okay. I don't see anyone from crew, so we can probably skip this one. but I remember that crew, although I think they mentioned that last time, that they released 0.3. Yeah. Okay, so I think we can wrap it up today's meeting. Thank you very much, all, and hope to see you all in 2 weeks.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to one of our members, Richard Marshall, who I think is still on the call. He's been helping resolve some of the kubectl issues and has been really helpful and constructive in his comments in helping to answer and to resolve some of these issues. So if you're out there, Richard, I think you still are. I really appreciate your efforts.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Richard, with that one.
You're welcome. Happy to help.
Okay, so with that positive note, we can close the meeting today. Thank you very much, all. See you in 2 weeks.